Uh, Chris, I asked Chris this. He talked about offensive identity. I understand that every week you're trying to game plan to win games. At some point, do you almost have to just run your offense, and if it doesn't lead to success on Saturday, then so be it, because this is a bigger picture going forward?
Yeah, I think it's. In fact, we talked about that, and I thought about it the last couple of weeks because we've been kind of just hodgepodging around a little bit, trying to fit to our personnel, trying to use our best players as best we can, and get something to happen. When you do that, sometimes you get a little bit too scheme oriented, and really, in the end, you kind of get to the point where the plays somewhat don't matter. I mean, it's more how you play, how aggressive you are fundamentally, and how tough a team you are, and it's establishing that type of identity. I think that's something that I think we're going to kind of set the course with here these next 5 weeks, and make it more important to everybody to establish what it is to play against this team. I know what it used to be, in terms of making sure that when the opponent leaves, that regardless of what happens on the scoreboard, they know that they had a long day, because they played against some tough guys that got after it and played the right way. So I think it's more about that. I think it's a good question. I think it's something I've thought about the last couple of weeks when you're saying, okay, let's try this to try to get the ball to this guy and this guy. Maybe it's something we haven't been doing a ton of, but it fits against their scheme. But then you really get it oiled up sometimes in a couple of shots in practice, probably not. And sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. A guy like Bo was a guy that we were trying to continually find different spots for. Isaiah was a guy when we went to the 3-back stuff. So, yeah, I think the rest of the way it's more about how we play and being a physical team and making it hard on the opponent.
With Jonathan, he'd played in 2 games. You guys threw him out there late fourth quarter Saturday. He's now played in 3 games.
Right.
With whatever you're planning or doing with him, how much is the redshirt situation taken into account, being he only has 1 more game to play in that respect?
Oh, it definitely is. We have to be smart. I mean, we're not going to – I think at the end of the week, we talked about it last week. It didn't really factor in a ton in terms of what we had planned, and if Travis and Davon both stayed kind of healthy as they went through the game, how much would he play? But then there was an opportunity to get him in there to do a little bit more than he had done the week before. So it was good to see. I mean, it's because it's so different in a game than it is whatever we can simulate right now in practice in terms of a scout team, and even when we go good on good against our defense. It's been a really good experience, but I mean, we're very mindful of where we are in the season, and you would probably say best case is the redshirt, because if the role is 10, 12 plays a game, that's a little bit up to him. We'll discuss it with him also, but that we are pretty mindful of that.
And just in general, when a guy's played in 2 games already, and a game like Saturday, the outcome wasn't in doubt, what's the value of throwing him out there late and burning a 3rd game, leaving you with only 1?
Well, I think it's just you have to see him play in real time. Real, like I said, real. It's nice to think, because it's the same thing with, like I said, a lot of these guys, when I went through the off season and looked in the spring and in camp, thought, oh yeah, these guys will be fine. You get in a game, it's a little different. And so for him, for his experience to know what it's like to really play in a game and the speed of it and how things actually get played, it's beneficial. It's for us to see how he reacts in those situations as well. And you can't say, well, let's wait till I know there was no at this point now. There's 1 more left. Maybe you take that into account. You look up, but he did get a number of plays, and it was pretty good experience for him. He did a good job, and either way, that'll help him going forward.
With Art struggling last week, I mean, spending so much time with him, what's holding him back? What part of his game, maybe more so than others, that's really hurt him this early?
Well, I don't, it's because you hate to go. That's what happens. I think when there's a smaller sample size, every week is like, do or die type thing. I don't. I think he was a little bit restricted at times, and at other times could have moved a little bit better in the pocket in terms of just creating space, just those subtle movements to give yourself a little more time and a little more space to get the ball out or to move on to the next guy, rather than getting kind of stuck in one spot and kind of almost feeling like, oh, I got to get this out. I think that's it. I think that's just a feel for the pocket and the spacing in the pocket. I think that's the stuff that's got to come a little bit more, whether it's pushing up or just a little move to the right or left to give yourself a little more room to get to that next read or to get the ball where it needs to go. I think that would be the one thing that, and again, a lot of that is it's the same thing. You know, we drill it and you can run at them and hit them with sticks and you make a move and all that. That's fine. When it happens for real, it's a little bit different because you got the big guys with their arms up and you know, I think those are things that you know we'll simulate as best we can, but really they just come from experience.
How do you approach? I mean, he's had poor games before, but I mean, 8 yards, statistically, you know, one of the worst stat lines in college football history. I mean, how do you kind of approach that with him? Because he has to hear that at some point.
Well, yeah, I think number one, it's concern for the person, you know, not so much the player and his psyche and his just general well-being because, you know, again, that's what this business is. It's hard, and it's hard. You know, it's one thing if you're getting paid $20 million, you could say, well, hey, you know, too bad. But when it's an 18-year-old kid, certainly you do get a tremendous amount of benefits of being a scholarship athlete and representing your school, but this is the hardest, you know, part that comes with it, and it's part of kind of the price you pay to wear that hat, so to speak. So he certainly gotten, you know, thrown into it quickly. And that was a, you know, bad performance to have to try to, you know, you're not going to justify it. You're not going to argue with anybody. You just kind of take it and put it in your back pocket and move on, try to get better. You know, I told him, I said, listen, you know, Mike Teal went 27-12 here. They booed him in here. They criticized him every day in the paper, and they still do. So, you know, that's just kind of how that's part of the job of being the guy, and you just got to take it as best you can. But to think that, you know, to sit there and go, well, I don't pay any attention to it, it's a little hard to miss, you know.
Does he it almost feels like sometimes it just kind of piles up on him. Like this past week, like you guys at the poor field position to start, then it's 10-0. Then there's the I'm not sure when it happened, but the legal man downfield, he loses that first down, and you guys kind of stalled out.
Right.
And it's almost, and do you feel that he presses at some point and maybe just tries to make something happen? And because it seems like it's regressive a lot of times in the game, his picks.
Well, I do think, and maybe it did at Kansas too. I did think in the game early, he was very vocal and aggressive, like. So I want to make something happen type of, and I was, you know, usually it's a little bit the other way around, you know, early on it'd been, hey, I'll just throw it to the back or I'll just check it down. And I was like, well, you know, you can just read it out if it takes you to the back. This was like, hey, like even the one to Bo, I'm like, Shameen was, I mean, I had a chance. I mean, you're going to get, hopefully at some point we come down with one of those. But I mean, Shameen's wide open, and it's like I was trying to take a shot. I'm trying to, you know, I think he was very aggressive going into the game. Which isn't a terrible thing, but I do think then all of a sudden, one bad one, two bad ones, a score, and it becomes overly aggressive. That might have been a factor to it as well.
Do you ever tell him, and like, I think it was like the Jets had done with Mark Sanchez, where like there'd be like a certain like color code, like you tell him like, hey, we can't be aggressive here, we can.
I don't think they, you know, I don't know. I think that's all part of the growing process of understanding and just trying to be patient and going through your reach. I know they did that. I know they did that with, I think Dilfer way back with the Bucks. It was like one guy to the back or one guy and run or whatever they were doing way back when they were, or it might have been Baltimore. I guess it was Baltimore. But no, I don't know if we'd get to that. You know, I think we just try to both extremes when it's like, yeah, I'll just check it down. Well, just look, read it, and if it gets you to the back, well, or hey, I'll just stick it in there. You know, I think that's all part of it. And you know, you could understand, you know, when the ball is not moving down the field or you're not scoring, to say, hey, I got to do something here. And I think there was a little bit of that the other day, you know, and it, you know, obviously didn't work out.
You obviously had success here before. Taking over this offense, what's been the biggest challenge through this far into the season?
Well, I think it's what you guys asked about. You know, I didn't want to just say, well, hey, you know, in Parcells used to always say, you know, the guys that come in with the book and go, yeah, here's the system. I mean, it wasn't really that. It was more of here's a foundation of what I think we can do and what we can be and the philosophy behind it. But then the actual practice of it, the actual, what came out of it to get ready for the season, you have to constantly kind of reevaluate what can we hang our hat on? Who are the guys? Number one, it's usually the most important. Who are the guys that can do what we want them to do? And then it's more, what do we want to do? So I think that, it's different. The run game's totally different than what we did, last time. Last time was all power and lead draw. That those two don't even exist as much anymore in football. So it's a different run scheme. And then, the different play actions off of it. So you're kind of, it's a different scheme, but it's the same thing. Like what I kind of pictured coming in, we're not necessarily really doing all of it for sure. I don't know what percentage of it, and we've had to tweak, a number of things just to try to use the guys that we have. I think the system is pretty flexible, and it's got really everything in it that you'd want in terms of the personnel groups, the formations. We've cut down a lot of the shifts and motions the last few weeks just because it was put a little bit more on as many young guys as we have, which is another thing that they had to do. So we've cut that out. We've cut, so there's a lot of stuff that's kind of cut out that I think when you look out and there's 10 out of 11 guys that are playing out there are all coming back, most of them for several years. At some point, these things will become second nature to them. But right now, it's a little bit of a simplified idea, and I think that's kind of what James was, getting at before. I think now it's more about how we play. Here's the base stuff that we want to get good at something and use our best guys down the stretch and try to at least, get some positive results for them because they've been working awfully hard at it with really not a lot of reward.
Thanks, Coach.
Okay, thanks, guys.